invite up to the stage Dr. Gene Kallenberg. Rusty, this is one of the most exciting programs in our industry, and that, of course, is the Qualcomm Tricorder X Prize. This just phenomenal challenge has had a wonderful lifespan and is now very much nearing the completion. And so to hear where we are on this and to make a special presentation, take it away, Rusty. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, by the way, I need to tell people, they don't know, some of them, that you are the executive director of the Center for Integrative Medicine at the University of California, San Diego.
Yes.
You know that?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think I knew that, yeah. Thank you. Let's see, I'll do that in a second here. Okay, so welcome, and thank you for inviting me and having me have the opportunity to tell you a little bit about the Tricorder project. This was inspired by the Tricorder medical devices in the Star Trek series and movies, which I assume many of you remember. The Qualcomm Tricorder X Prize, or QTXP, is a global competition sponsored by Qualcomm to develop a consumer-friendly, patient-operated mobile device capable of diagnosing and interpreting about 13 or 14 common medical conditions and capturing vital health metrics. The tricorder will enable self-assessment, self-diagnosis, and self-monitoring. And unlike the tricorders in the Star Trek series, which were used by the physicians, these tricorders are being designed to be used by the consumer, by the patient themselves. So how did a practicing family physician and an academic faculty at UCSD, standing innocently somewhere, become involved in this competition? In academics, a lot of projects sort of cross your path. And so what was it about the QTXP that sort of interested me and my colleagues? Well, it helps to be a Trekkie, and let's see if this is going to work. Maybe yes, maybe no. Advancing the slide here, or not? We don't have many slides, but there's one that's a cute one, if we can get it to go. But well, I'll ask for some technical assistance from the technicians. All right. Okay. There we go. That's all I wanted you to see. So, very important information-laden slide. So, being a Trekkie helped, in terms of sort of being interested in doing this Qualcomm competition. And I'm not a Trekkie that has outfits like that, so I don't show up at Comic-Con in an outfit or anything. But I've been watching the Star Trek physicians for the whole series, and very interested in Bones, Dr. McCoy, and Beverly Crusher, and even the Voyager's emergency medical hologram duty officer, because they really reflect, to me, primary care physicians in the future. They're good old family docs on board these vessels. They were responsible for the care of the entire crew, including their mental health, traveling in deep space. And they handle all sorts of mundane things like pregnancies and fractures and all kinds of stuff like that. But they also, handled alien viruses and DNA-altering infections and things like that as well. And they did this with wonderful technology, a major piece of which was the tricorder. And they also had very good bedside manners. That's why I like to think of them as good primary care physicians. So being a Trekkie helped. Willingness to help a colleague helped. Eric Veary is the medical director for the Qualcomm Prize, and he's one of our consultants at UCSD. He's a neuro-otologist. We call him our dizziness doctor. We refer a lot of patients to him who have dizziness. We also had a recognition that modern technology and the EMR have made the tricorder really the next logical step. And I'll say a little bit more about that in a minute. But we also recognized that the benefits of having an informed, engaged patient is really the disrupting force in medicine. I mean, there are other technology disruptors, but having a patient who's really informed and activated in the course of their care is really a game changer, because we only see them 2.5 times a year for 30 minutes or 7 minutes or 10 minutes, and the rest of the time they're really at their own discretion and taking care of their own care. We also recognized that we had technical capability to help the project. We had our Clinical Translational Research Institute at UCSD. We have our technical expertise in computing at Cal IT Squared. And we do have Epic as our EMR, which is becoming sort of ubiquitous and really gave us a great registry capability and case finding capability. We also had a desire to become a part of the future and to help invent the future in terms of the tricorders. So what is that future of medicine that really forms the backdrop of a tricorder? Well, among the other great technological advances like, genetic engineering and 3D printing of organs and things like that, at the cutting edge of patient interaction with the medical industrial complex, or is at their primary care physician level and their medical office. That's really where most patients come into contact with medical care. And that patient-centered medical home, current buzz phrase, the PCMH, is really the office of the future and is composed of a multi-professional team and an EMR at its backbone. And you've been hearing a lot of discussion about how that EMR is central to the workflow and how we all are very loath now to do anything outside of that EMR. It's kind of fixed to us. But the other aspects of that office are that we look at populations as much as we look at individuals. So we're now responsible for whole populations that are signed up with our office, whether they choose to come in for anything in particular or not. We're also focused on prevention as much as cure. So we very much want to do the right thing by patients and try and prevent things that are more costly and more morbidity down the road. And we also want to promote self-management as much as expert care. As we mentioned, patient behaviors, health behaviors, really trump most of our interventions in the long run. We also wanted to increase, and we want to increase access, and access can be defined in numbers of ways. One is geographic, so patients who live very much at a distance from a health center or a primary care office. We need to be able to communicate with them and facilitate care to be delivered to them. We want to do it over a broader span of time. The patient's reference today now is 24/7. You have a prescription to be refilled. You are calling the office complaining if it hasn't been done in a half hour. So the old 72-hour rule, by the time I get around to it, is no longer really valid. It's also, access is also defined in terms of the modality, the reach, the breadth of information transfer. So we not only get messages, we get voice, we get video, we get data, and we want it all to be entered by the EMR. And much of that, or some of that now, is being entered wirelessly. So how can the tricorder really help our patients? Well, I think it can do monitoring and predicting. So right now we have Fitbits that help to monitor things that are very much in the sort of common consumer world. And this allows patients to understand their condition and the data about their biological functioning. Tricorders will be able to advise and thus prevent illness or problems down the road, because patients will have the information and they will have information about that data embedded in the tricorder that helps them intervene early. Some of my patients have continuous glucose monitoring right now, which gives them a readout of their glucose every 5 minutes, which helps them prevent hyper and hypoglycemic episodes far better than my advice every 6 or 8 weeks when I see them. And the tricorder will actually be able to assess and diagnose patients. This is a new angle, I think, and very, very remarkable and very wonderful if we can get it perfected. This will allow patients to seek help early and to seek help in a more informed fashion. Bodies have very limited sets of symptoms. Many symptoms are caused by inconsequential perturbations that occur on a day in, day out basis and don't mean anything. Some of those very same symptoms can reflect really serious illness. So if a tricorder in a reliable fashion can help distinguish between those things, that can provide a very great efficiency to healthcare. So wired healthcare is really the next step, as you've heard from the other speakers, and the tricorder, I think, is very much going to be a part of that. And we're happy to work with versions 1.0. And we'll see if they can switch on to the next slide for us. And in the meantime, I'm going to introduce Grant Campany, who is the prize lead for the Tricorder X Prize competition, and he'll tell you a little bit more about the teams and the competition.
Well, thank you. It's an honor to be here, and actually wanted to thank Rusty and his colleagues at UCSD for their support. I know this has been a pretty daunting task over the last few years as we pulled together all of this infrastructure to support these teams. But a little bit on the backdrop of this competition, and many of you may know, but maybe many of you don't, but I'm going to give you a little bit of context. So this competition was actually launched in 2012 in January at CES. And at that time, we actually had announced the opening of this competition. We solicited inputs from, or registrations from teams all around the world. We actually had over 300 teams register initially for this competition. And as the years followed, 2 years ago, we actually announced the top 10 finalists. And today we are down to 5. And so the whole point of today is actually to recognize those 5 for their remarkable achievements over the last few years in actually attaining and actually validating the diagnostic capabilities of these tricorder devices. And with that, we also talked a lot today and already in this session about the hurdles that companies go through to actually get their products through clinical and regulatory and eventually to the market. But imagine, as Rusty described, conceiving of a device that actually not only incorporates a lot of the innovation that many of us work with, but also the ability of these devices to actually be able to interact with, consumers. People that have no more understanding of medicine than the actual ability to use a smartphone. And so that's the profile of the patients that we're targeting now. Is you just have to have a basic understanding of a smartphone use and actually arm them with a device, and they have to actually go through the process of using this device independently. And so these devices are basically designed and engineered to actually be focused on a consumer and to actually have the algorithms and the software and the capability to actually get to a diagnosis. And that's how we actually will determine a winner. So the team who does best at actually identifying the 13 conditions that we actually have to identify will actually win a major prize purse. So with that, Rick, if you wouldn't mind joining me up here. I'd like to first of all thank Rick and Qualcomm Foundation for providing the financial support to actually operate this competition.
One of the cool things about working and doing a little startup in a big company is you can fund $10 million prizes. That's kind of cool.
Right. So I think with that, we also, as X Prize, are very delighted to be a part of this ecosystem. And as you meet the teams and as you go out in the back and actually see what they've developed, this is really an interesting aspect of this conference, is actually to get these teams exposed to more of the industry and how the industry can actually work with these teams to eventually bring these devices to market. So with that, I'd like to now announce the 5 teams that are actually going to win a $50,000 milestone payment. 2 of these 5 teams are not here today, but I'm going to recognize them anyway. The first team, Team IntelliSense Scanadu, who's actually from Belfast, Ireland, and Silicon Valley. They're not here, but they will certainly win their award. Thank you. And Dynamical Biomarkers, a team from Taipei, Taiwan, and also the team lead, C.K. Peng, is from Harvard University. So the 3 teams that are present, I'd ask the team representative to come up on stage and join us, please. Team Danvantri, all the way from India. Sam Ramachandran, sorry about that. And now Team DMI, Dr. Eugene Chan, all the way from Boston and Harvard University. Thanks. See you. And so, just a side note, so Dr. Chan and his team also competed in a sister competition, Nokia Sensing X Challenge, and was one of the grand prize winners of that competition. So he's still at it in this, and we hope to see good things. So wonderful. Our final team, Final Frontier, all the way from Philadelphia, and Dr. Basil Harris. And so, yeah, one of the interesting things that this competition really represents, too, is, and I think I encourage you to try to spend some time in the back over the next day or so actually speaking with these gentlemen, because actually they bring unique perspectives and experience. Like I mentioned, two of the team leaders here today are actually practicing physicians and some medical doctors here. So they actually have real-world experience in how to actually design and implement these tricorders. So I encourage you to spend some time getting to know them, the hurdles they face, and I'm sure they have many stories to share with you about their ups and downs competing in this competition, but more importantly, how they can begin working with you to actually bring some of these technologies to market. So with that, I encourage you to check out what they developed and get to know them. So anyway, thanks. Appreciate your time.
All right, thank you.